There are many things being talked about around the lobster industry right now that are seen as very detrimental to an industry that has been a backbone for our coastal communities for many years. So the question being is, what is your stance on the lobster industry's issues, and what would you do to either enforce and or address those issues, starting at the end?
I grew up.
Oh, excuse me. Before you start, we're only getting a minute and a half on this one, Dave.
Okay, I won't mention where I grew up. In Steuben, which is heart of lobster country. And it, right now, the lobstering industry is under attack in order to make the case so that we have to do something to save the right whales. And that's a human response to the fact that there's a significant species on the brink of going extinct. But it takes, they're so on the brink that we need to make sure that what we do is wise, and that requires that it be evidence-based. And I just looked at the maps where they have found the dead right whales, and there's not a single one in the last 5 years in the Gulf of Maine. Makes you think about what the evidence is for the proposals. It may well be that getting rid of the vertical lines is going to make a difference, but I don't see how we know that yet. Secondly, lobstermen have been doing everything that's been asked of them in order to keep the fishery sustainable, to protect against entanglements, etc. And those steps we haven't had time yet to evaluate. It seems a little odd to take them on when they have been doing everything asked for of them. So we need evidence-based proposals. We need a way for the lobster industry and the individual lobstermen to maintain their way of life, because in point of fact, here along the coast, we survive in large part because of lobstering.
I worry so much about our lobstermen, and it's not just the lobstermen themselves, it's the down effects to it as well. If we lose our lobster industry, it'll affect our grocery stores, it's going to affect our gas stations, it's affecting families. It's not just the fishermen, it's a huge, huge issue. And Jonathan's exactly right. The lobstermen have always done everything that's been asked of them. They may have moaned and groaned a little bit. They may speak about it, but they do it. They do what is said. And the science is not there. The right whales are not in the Gulf of Maine. I was at one of the rallies. I talked to a gentleman that has been fishing for 40 years, has not seen a single right whale yet. But NOAA is insisting that, oh my gosh, it's there, and we've got to do this, this, and this, and they're placing all of these undue restrictions on our lobstermen. And I feel that the state of Maine should have filed suit in the beginning of all of this, instead of the Maine Lobstermen Association having to have the defense fund and actually having to file the suit and appeal it and so forth. And Governor Mills says, I'm going to give some money to the defense fund. I just wish the state of Maine would have filed the suit. So I think that's one of the things that I would have liked to really pushed for, is for the state of Maine to be there, not the Maine Lobstermen Association having to do it on their own.
And I do believe that the trickle-down effect of punishing these lobstermen and women is going to be astronomical. And there's going to be people losing their homes, there's going to be people losing their business and their vehicles. And when all those things happen, then you see more addiction issues, you see more alcohol problems, you see more spousal abuse, you see all those things. So we can't afford that. not on the shoddy evidence that we've seen so far. I think we, as representatives, if I'm elected, I will always be 100% behind the lobstermen.
In my last iteration in the legislature, I was a liaison for the Zone A Lobster Council. And they have been absolutely marvelous to work with. And they look at their business with really good science of what they're looking at. When they talked about limiting traps, which was not an easy thing to do, they looked at how they save the brood lobster and how they work with that. They've also had to deal with the gray zone that's between Canada and the U.S. that nobody claims, with two different lobstering rules, which make it very hard to deal with. Now they're getting hit from the right whale issues. There needs to be, and I will say this and I'll agree, a reasonable scientific approach. They're requiring a type of equipment that has never been tested, that has not even been able to get to make these changes in the time that they're recommending. This is unreasonable, and I would love to see NOAA come to Maine and look at what we're doing here. I think we need to do everything we can to support the lobster industry.
To say that this is an issue that I worry about would be a gross misunderstatement. I've had many sleepless nights over this issue. I am the only federally permitted lobster license holder in the entire legislature. I think that it's absolutely imperative that the residents of my district send me back to Augusta with my expertise, not only for the people in my district, but for the whole entire lobster industry and for the economy of the state of Maine. I am the ranking member on the Marine Resources Committee. I have authored a letter to the president on behalf of the legislature, which was signed by every single member of the legislature. I passed the legal defense fund for the lobster industry, and I'm just there fighting for my life, and no one's going to fight harder for the lobster industry than someone that's fighting for their life, and so that my children will not only so that I can put food in their mouths, but so that maybe, like my son Carter said to Noah in his statement, that I'm just a 9-year-old kid that hopes his dad doesn't lose his job. And that's who I'm fighting for. So I'm going to come with all the passion in the world on that issue.
So I can't really top what's been said already. We do need to take the fight, as has been said, to the federal government, and the state does need to be fighting that, not just as you said in the past, as an intervener. I don't have experience in the lobster industry directly. I certainly would want to be the best advocate I can, and I would be, to do that, I would need to work with people directly in the industry. A number of my customers are lobster fishermen, so that would be important to me if I were to be elected, to have people like Mr. Falkingham to help me be that advocate. And not that it's directly to this question, but I would add, it's also important for NOAA to consider that if they are pushing such misdirected, poorly founded practices, they're literally ignoring what other actions they could be taking to protect the whales that they are charged with protecting. If they're focusing just on lobster, they're missing the bigger picture.
As a person wanting to represent the citizens of District 8, I live in the woods. And the corner of Washington County that I would be representing is the northeast corner, and those folks live in the woods. And all I know about this issue is what I read in the Bangor Daily. But it seems pretty darn clear to me that there's a disconnect between the data and the proposed policy, and that concerns me wherever and whenever it happens.
I only know about the issue from what I read. But one of the questions I have is there seems to be an awful big push for offshore wind power. Aren't those going to be tethered to the bottom as well? If we're talking about eliminating vertical lines, but replacing the fishing vertical lines with vertical lines for windmills, that just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me if the danger is entanglements.
Absolutely preposterous that NOAA's going after our fishing industry, our lobster industry. It's so deeply rooted here in Maine and here on the coast. Our district has numerous fishing villages, Cutler, Lubec, Machiasport. It breaks my heart to even think what would happen to our small fishing villages if this happened. Is NOAA not looking at the big picture? Do they not care? I watched most of the meeting that they had in Portland, and people were pouring their heart out and telling them about how they live, what they do. This is their life, and it's in one ear and out the other. Do they just not care? Was it just a facade, just to listen, just to play the part? I just don't understand why we're even discussing it. Why is it a thing? Governor Mills isn't doing enough. Day one, she should have been going after and suing the government. This is part of our livelihood. It's part of what makes our state great. It's one of our biggest, if not our biggest industry. This will decimate our communities, and the trickle-down effect of it will be detrimental. It'll cripple us, and it absolutely breaks my heart. We need to do more. Our legislators are doing everything they can, right? Signing on. The governor needs to do more.
We actually need the Attorney General and the DMR to step up to help fight for our lobster fishermen. And as far as NOAA goes, I can't believe that they've got and been given by Congress so much power. They shouldn't have the authority to do all it. All I ever remember years ago with NOAA, they basically were there for weather forecast. But now it's gone, they're into everything. It's just crazy. And this will hurt us because in our area, this is probably 90% of the people. That's what they do. They either clam or they're a lobster fisherman. So this is sad. And we've got to stick together to try to fight for a fisherman. I don't know what we can do on the state level, but if I'm elected, I'll try to do anything that I can. But we got to stand behind these people. They're the backbone, and that's hard work out there. And they've already been put under a lot of restrictions for the last few years. They've been at them, and it's very costly for them. I have a lot of family that fishes for lobsters. They're only going out one day a week because they can't afford the fuel.
In my district, I'm faced with the dilemma of the lobster industry, but we're also faced with the dilemma of the timber harvesting industry too. Our forest products industry, like the lobster industry, is under attack, and our governor isn't doing enough to fight that attack. That I believe, like in my business, I set the tone for how that business is going to be run. The governor sets the tone for how the state is going to be run. We need leadership in Augusta that'll take on this battle with the NOAA and support our lobster industry. We need a leader in Augusta that'll fight for the permit so that the dams will stay in the Kennebec and our timber harvesting industry will stay healthy. That's a heritage industry, like the lobster industry. It's multi-generational. And, as someone who built and owns a small business that's family owned that I've now passed down to my son, it's very important for me that family businesses are supported in this state.
The more you read and the more you hear and the more you investigate, you think, I'm really missing something here because the research was not there to put any of this. It's almost as if the lobster industry got arrested without cause, and there was just you want to protect a whale. So if somebody said let's make sure these. I'm all for protecting any species that's about to disappear, but the reasons for attacking this lobster industry for that is it's just not accurate. So I'm just almost, I mean, I know we're past the point where we can just wake up and say, oh yeah, it was a misunderstanding, we blew it. But we cannot ever lose the lobster industry. It is such a staple to our state. I don't live on the coast. I feel as though I live on the coast with these lobster fishermen who are under attack. I think it's disgusting, and I'm hoping it'll go away. But I think we need to just keep fighting and putting our foot down and making sure this doesn't happen.
So I don't have the experience of Billy Bob with his traditional family fishing, but I am a mom who has a 15-year-old who absolutely loves it. So I, being a mom, will fight for what my child likes to do and be a productive member of society. As I've stated with Noah 3 times on the Zoom call down at the Portland Forum when I was there to speak, and I submitted comments online. This area is built on tradition and a heritage of sustainability. When you have 0 for numbers, you can't really have a problem with getting less than 1 because you've already met it. So what they're doing is, in effect, like somebody else said, not saving the whales at all, because they're still getting hit by chips, they're still getting entangled in Canadian gear, and all they're doing is destroying a livelihood and an economy for the state of Maine. So I can't say that I'm a family tradition lobster fishing family, but my son wants to be the first edition. And I will fight for that and everybody else to make sure that he has an opportunity to be able to do that.
I think that, we've talked a lot about our proud traditions and all of that, but like everything else, if you know the rules of the game and you don't win, it's your own fault. And to that point, where is the money coming from? Now, NOAA is just a bunch of people. And like any big organization, small people. They get up in the morning, they put their pants on one leg at a time, and they go to work, and they go home on Friday and probably don't give it another thought. But where's the money coming from? The money has to come from, probably, it could come from environmental concerns, but I would suspect that there's a diversion going on here, and it might be the cruise ship industry. I think that probably as long as they can keep this going over here, and they're looking at lobster fishermen and making a big time of it, the cruise ship industry is steaming right through and not giving a darn. That's really all I've got to say on it.
Thank you. Next question. And we'll be wrapping up here shortly. I know we've gone over, but I think it's been very worthwhile. We've had a great panel, big panel, which is great that we had this many turn out, but man, it takes a while to get through all this. On this next one, I've saved probably the most controversial for last. And around this, it has a lot of strong feelings on both sides. And only because anybody on this issue could quote-unquote soapbox, I'm going to limit time to 1 minute to state your position as to what and why. Dave will give you a few seconds on the but we don't want to get people to ramble because I know it will. This has been a hot button issue for a long, long time, and at the state level, state legislators always were able to say, that's a federal issue, I'll take a walk on it. That's up to the feds. It's up to the feds. Well, recently, the Supreme Court kicked the Roe v. Wade decision out, not based upon much as it said about a right to choose, but more back to states' rights. It's saying it's a decision the federal government shouldn't have made. It's a decision that should go to the state governments. So as a result, everybody, except for you, Bob Granger, boy, you get to take a walk on this one. But this is absolutely going to be a topic of discussion at the state level going forward. So we would like to know, people would like to know your position on the Roe v. Wade decision, what it means, and where you have a stance on the abortion right to life issue and right to choose issue, or however you want to frame that. And if you have any restrictions or nuances or caveats to what your position may be, good luck.